Boys and girls, moms and dads, welcome back to Pin to Pin, the Volleyball Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Tolman. To my right here is my co-host, Danger Will Robinson.
That's me.
And behind the screen over there is our producer wearing the exact same shirt I am. Completely coincidental, because if it weren't a coincidence, then we'd have him on on camera and we could prove it. Anyway,
I wasn't a part of this.
Producer Noah Cotterman with us today. We're excited to get episode 9 going. We just put out episode 8 after a long hiatus, but episode 9 is ready to roll. You ready to get the show going?
Yep.
All right, let's freaking do it. All right, so let's go ahead and start with Noah's trivia.
So the question from last episode was, what was the nickname of the Chinese women's volleyball head coach, Lang Ping?
Yep, and we have no idea.
Her nickname was the Iron Hammer.
The Iron Hammer.
According to USA Volleyball Trivia. That's where I got the question.
It sounds like a playing name, not a coaching name.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you do as a coach that's an Iron Hammer? Well, maybe
You're
just
standing on a box, just firing balls at your players.
Dodge a volleyball.
You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a volleyball. You can dig a wrench, you can dig a volleyball. Yeah, interesting name.
Very.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
Did anybody guess it? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like you to comment and stuff.
Yeah, we didn't really get many comments last episode.
Right.
So
that's okay.
We can't know yet, guys. The episode hasn't been produced.
I know. That's why I kind of...
Will Robinson.
That's why I kind of steered another direction, because after I said that, I was like, oh, wow, we haven't put that one out yet. So that's a little awkward. But we do have a new question for today.
We do.
Yeah. What is the question? The show Noah's show trivia for episode 9. What's your new question, Noah?
What school has the most women's volleyball national championships?
Penn State.
You think it's Penn State? I think it's Penn State. You stole my answer.
It's Penn State or Stanford.
We think there's probably
think it's Nebraska.
4 or 5. Penn State, Stanford, maybe Texas.
I don't think it's Texas.
Maybe Nebraska.
Yeah.
We feel like we should know this answer.
It's not Wisconsin. It could maybe be Hawaii. Long
It's
Beach
going to be
State
somebody.
has a couple.
It's going to be somebody that won like 6 or 7 of them back in the early days of
Penn
women's
State won
volleyball.
4 in a row.
So one, correct.
So
That's hard.
That helps you,
right? That's
Yeah.
that's very beneficial. Cannot ask this question for the men's game, right?
Too easy.
Too easy. If you don't know it's UCLA, you probably don't know much about volleyball.
They're like 19 or
Yeah, it's crazy.
20 or 25 or 30.
That's why I'm thinking there may be a team back in the day that we don't know about. When was the first? Noah, maybe you can look this up for us. When was the first women's NCAA championship held? Like, who was the very first
what year?
champion? And what year was it? So, Noah's looking that up. Let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. Last episode, the end of last
alluded
episode.
to it.
Yeah. I talked about at the end of last episode. So if you made it through 8, now you're sitting here at 9, anxiously awaiting our thoughts about growth versus fixed mindsets.
Buzzwords and buzz phrases, if you will.
Sure.
Right? Like, especially in our world of high school.
Mindsets are something that you and I are very in tune with. We like to talk about it a lot. Like to discuss these with our teams.
I think it's fun.
I think I'm a little.
I think it's different.
I'm really bummed out that there aren't enough coaches that talk about this stuff.
You have to want to do it, though. It's not something that I don't think a lot of people want.
I think it's
to do,
really important that we train both sides, right?
Yeah, all sides.
All sides. It's
Everything.
just both.
Every of the sides.
However many sides there are.
Yep.
But the mental side, I don't think it's trained deliberately enough at every level. I mean, at the end of the day, if your physical part of volleyball is going to end, what are you left with, right? All the mental tools that hopefully volleyball or a sport gave you. Noah, you got our answer for us?
I do.
What was it?
First year was 1981.
Okay, 81.
And it was hosted in Pauley Pavilion.
Okay. And the winner?
Could you guess who the 2 schools are?
I'm going to guess UCLA because it was at Pauley, and I
Pauley?
swear it happens all the time.
UCLA and USC.
Oh, there you go.
And
There's probably
third
like
place
6 teams
was
in
San
total.
Diego State. Fourth place was Pacific.
Yeah, so all California teams.
Right. Where the
shock.
origins of all volleyball, right? California.
USC ended up winning in 5.
See, I had mentioned USC when Noah talked about our question off air. I was like, I think USC could totally
It could
be in
be
that
one.
conversation.
I think that's one of the 5.
the women of Troy.
The Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
This is a topic I think we can talk about. Speaking of Mount Rushmores, the Mount Rushmore of boys volleyball coaches in the state of Arizona.
Oh, geez, that's going to be one that everybody really wants to talk about.
I think it's interesting because we're at the point where it's been like it's
I-
been a long
I
time.
I don't think anybody cares.
That's fine.
We have a very small number of people that would care about that.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, maybe that's episode 74.
Maybe comment. Maybe if I get a good
Well,
backing.
sure. Comment who you want to, what you want us to talk about. Yeah. We will take all show ideas for sure. All right, so let's get going on mindset stuff. Will, you got a quote of the show? What's the quote? Who's it from? Kind of introduce us here to maybe our guru of kind of what we're going to be discussing.
Yeah, this is a lady that I think is smart. You know, she has a lot of academia.
You think
in
she's
her
smart?
life.
No, she's definitely smart.
I think she knows what she's doing.
Studied at Yale,
Her name
Columbia.
Her name is Carol Dweck.
Uh-huh.
The quote is: "Test scores and measures of achievement tell you where a student is, but they don't tell you where a student could end up."
Okay,
And Carol
explain
Dweck
that.
is a professor of psychology at Stanford. She's been there since 2004, and like you said, she went to Yale and Columbia.
Explain that quote to me, Will. I don't know that I understand that.
It's not where you are right now; it's where you could be, and there's always possible growth. And she talks most. I swear, most things she talks about is students.
Well, sure, because that's what she is.
Yeah.
But I mean,
No matter
test
what
scores?
the result that you're getting should
Now.
not influence. Yeah.
Right.
Should not influence your effort moving forward in that same
Right.
context or same.
Sure, I
area
love
of-
that.
Yeah.
Definitely mindset.
Easier
stuff.
said than done. And
Well, yeah, if you're not good at something, a lot of people just quit.
yeah, I suck.
Yeah, chalk
I'm
it
over
up to
yeah.
I can't do it. That's never a good thing. So she also introduced to us some of the growth versus fixed mindset stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is not new. We're not like reinventing the wheel here on any of this stuff.
And I think if you've listened to podcasts, this is for sure something you've probably listened to. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll hit some new fans when they're looking for, they just Google mindset and they
where we
find
get 'em.
us. That's how we get them. Like, oh, these guys are great. They have all kinds of insight. All right, so let's start with a fixed mindset. What is a fixed mindset?
In life, it would be
in general.
bad result. I'm not trying to get better at what just happened.
Okay. Yeah, they see talent and intelligence as being stuck in the moment, so to speak, fixed, right?
Yeah.
Stuck. Like what Carol was talking about there.
You're in
right?
your own little loop.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I scored a 70% on the math test. I'm going to be a C math student for the rest of my life.
All the time, yeah.
Okay. Fixed mindset. They also don't, it doesn't matter how hard they try, right? They're always going to be average or wherever they're at, I suppose.
They're not looking for improvement. They're not active
Right.
with their pursuit.
One of the things I talk about a lot with my kids is athletes with fixed mindsets view feedback as personal.
Attacking.
Yeah, like coach hates me. He's always telling me to do it right. Yeah.
And we're
That's
never
why I
going to
hate
say
you.
it with the perfect tone. And that's what's tough from like our point of view.
Oh, well, let's not even get started on tone because I have the worst tone.
It's not all the time.
Yeah, well, right.
I've been with you for a while now. Not all the time.
You've heard my bad tone.
I've
though.
seen you good. I've seen you bad. I know the spectrum. Every coach has a good and bad spectrum.
I've been told in many settings that I have a tone issue, which is fine. I understand that, so I try hard. Fixed mindset people.
Growth mindset.
Yeah, I need to. Right, I have a growth mindset towards my tone. They run away or hide from challenges and their weaknesses, which is crazy to think about as an athlete on a volleyball court.
Athlete in general.
To try to hide. Well, yeah, sure. To try to hide from your challenges or your weaknesses. Like I'm not very good at, well, I mean, we could look at professional athletes like Ben Simmons, for example. What's his biggest weakness?
Shooting.
Yeah, and he runs from it at times.
Same
Talk
thing
about
with,
a
like
fixed
Shaquille O'Neal.
mindset.
He said he could have had like 2,000 to 3,000 more points.
Shaquille O'Neal probably
Just-
would have been the greatest
scorer of all time.
If he just could have made free throws.
Wow.
He probably. Excuse me. Do we have a cough button?
I don't know what that means. I've never heard that.
Like on the radio. This isn't a radio show, but
Not a radio show.
do you think Shaquille O'Neal had a fixed mindset towards his free throw shooting?
I think I'm Shaquille. I would say he is happy where he is and with other skills in his sport to where he feels maybe I don't need to really focus on it. Even he probably knew he probably knew it was his Achilles heel, and he was okay with it even after the fact.
Because I'm great anyway.
Yeah,
but there's a fixed mindset if you
Correct.
tell me, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but I think every great is going to have that. They're going to be like, I could have been better. Michael Jordan could have been a better shooter, 100%.
that's a long pause because I don't know how to answer that.
I think he was a great slasher, but I don't know if he was
but
like
Jordan
this
was
really.
he shot the ball a ton, and I don't.
He wasn't a very proficient shooter, though.
He was about a 50% shooter for his career, which is huge for a guy that took his
For a shooting guard.
a volume
I don't know
shooter
if
as
it
a
was
shooting
50.
guard.
Is it 50?
I bet it's about 50%. Noah's gonna look it up for us. All right, the last part about a fixed mindset that drives me crazy, and I talk about this more with my girls volleyball players than I do my guys, because they see success of others as a threat.
Yeah.
You know, and girls tend to, and again, when we talk about this stuff, don't get offended and start.
It's just what we've seen.
Being upset that we're overgeneralizing, because we are to a certain extent, right? But females in what we've seen in general compare themselves to others more than boys do.
Yeah.
And it can become
not in a good way.
Correct.
Yeah.
It can become very detrimental to their development, their growth. You become very fixed. Like, well, I'm never going to be as good as her, so why try?
Yeah.
So those are fixed mindset people. We coach those people every day.
We're around them every day.
Every day.
We are them every day.
every day.
Yeah.
It's a human nature to be that at times, to be fixed and to just not.
I think self-awareness is really
important.
important for this stuff as well. Because how are you going to know if you
Right.
can't?
The one thing I wish I was better at as a coach is reflection.
That's why you have good assistants.
I don't think I get my kids to reflect good enough on themselves. Is like we talk about, go home, evaluate what you did tonight. Before you go to sleep, whatever, lay in your bed. And I want you to think about your practice. I wish I'd get them to write it down. You're better at getting them to write
the
stuff
journal
down.
thing is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I think it'd be great. It's a great tool to get kids in general to start practicing this stuff, because once
Everyday
they're
life.
physically done playing volleyball, being able to reflect on what you've done, evaluate your performance, whatever it is, I think can be really powerful. And that's when you start to see the fixed mindset. Like at practice today, I was struggling with my passing, and coach kept getting after me, and my attitude towards that was certainly poor. So therefore I lost an opportunity to grow.
Yeah. I can't stand when a player or a team goes into practice, doesn't get any better, and they just waste like 2 hours. Oh my gosh, what just happened? That's 2 hours we'll never get back.
Yeah.
And most of the time that's going to be fixed.
And so, yeah.
And I would say fixed mindsets are actually usually when you're physically maybe not in a great place, injuries,
Right.
maybe nagging,
Right.
fatigue, mentally, maybe you've had a long day.
Sure.
Emotionally, maybe some you just got some news.
You're
I think if you put all those factors in, I think that's going to affect how much you want to grow during that day.
Yeah.
But then sometimes for some reason, all 12, every single time, just come in and it's the worst possible. It's crazy.
The hardest part for me as a coach, and I think a lot of coaches struggle with this, is just understanding that those types of days happen.
And you kind of have to be okay with them.
Yeah.
I remember coaching Garrick at 15.
Well,
and
the 15-year-old boy is like,
yeah, no, he's just
gotta-
like, I want to compete all the time. Like, hey, I think we can have practices where we're just focusing on something little, like small, and
Sure.
We're just getting better at this little thing. It doesn't have to be super intense.
Right. Well, and just
That was
having,
hard for him.
Well, he wants to compete all the time, but just having hard days, like especially when you coach teenagers, right? Like you talked about, maybe they had a tough day, maybe they're tired, maybe they just got some bad news, whatever. I think that's the hardest part as coaches is realize like there are times when our athletes are struggling with something, and they may not be completely mentally engaged in our practice. That's when the yelling happens. That's when my tone gets bad.
That's when you're yelling.
Right. And that's the hard part. You got to realize that humans just react differently sometimes.
We're not robots. We can't do the same thing every day. We try to.
Yeah.
But
right.
there comes a time where it's like, I can't do this. And
Okay.
that's going to be your fixed mindset.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we just need to, like we talked about earlier, self-awareness, identify, okay, I'm in a fixed mindset. Why did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it that I did that got me to this point? And then hopefully that repeated behavior doesn't happen as much.
Sure.
It's
an interesting conversation. Let's talk about growth. So people that have a growth mindset, they view challenges as part of the process, right?
Failure is something that they're not,
okay.
it's not going to hit their identity as much. It's not going to affect their ego. They're just going to be like, I am who I am and I did that.
Right. It's pretty matter of fact.
Yeah.
The more practice that I get, the better I get. They actually see practice as being part of the process. The feedback isn't personal. They realize the feedback is helping them to grow.
Yeah.
Regardless of the tone. Because there are some athletes I've coached some where you hear coaches talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
I can yell at that kid. I can address that kid. I can just let him have it, and he's just going to keep on ticking. And those are the athletes that I think coaches
Some kids
draw
can't even
to.
look at. They start crying. Oh,
Just like, sorry, I didn't mean it. Right?
my bad.
They're not afraid to try new things. Right? Not afraid to give it a shot, whether they're bad at it at the beginning or not. That's definitely growth. And then we talked a little bit about it. They see failure as an opportunity to get better. We learn a lot more when we fail than when we win, if approached with the right mindset.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to talk about mindset wise is when I was listening to, I don't know, maybe it was like a Jordan Peterson like podcast. I don't really remember, but they had this Navy SEALs guy on, of course. They're just like the highest performing unit of all time.
Yeah.
And he's like, they view every single thing. They have the same criteria, no matter the result of the mission, whether it was a real mission, a practice mission. So then it's always the same routine.
Yeah.
Before, during, and after. Because
that's an incredible mindset.
Yeah, well, and that's life and death.
Yeah, your life's on the line. It's a little different.
Yeah, but even then,
volleyball.
it's like we could have done this better. Mm-hmm. So then, with that mindset, I guess they're kind of always thinking about. They're very intentional, and I think when we talk about mindsets, you got to make sure you're being intentional with what you're doing.
Right.
I see the most intentional athlete probably in the right mindset in private lessons. That's when an athlete can have the most intention, I feel like. It's insane. And then I would say the lull of an athlete is going to be like a girls' club season because it's like 6 years long.
It's so long. Right.
Yeah. And they have that long week, And,
Sure.
And they're like, I don't want to be here.
So then how, I guess this leads into kind of what I guess we're going to talk about here at the end is how do you develop, or how can we better develop a growth mindset? And I think the first thing that you can start with is you stop drawing conclusions, stop trying to predict the future, right? Because what happens today certainly isn't an indicator of what's going to happen tomorrow. I think all too often our athletes look at now as being forever.
Permanent. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so I think they struggle with saying, well, if I work really hard today, tomorrow's definitely going to be, I'm going to be better at it. Well, you might not.
Yeah.
And that's where they get in trouble is you get into that grind, that rat race, and you slowly start to fix your mindset because you're not seeing these dramatic increases. It's a little bit like exercising, especially
you want
for
immediate results. You want to see it right away.
Like old guys like me, we get in the gym and we start working out. 2 months into the process and haven't seen anything change,
I'm over it.
It's
I'm
like
over it.
I might be 20 minutes into the process. Like, man, I'm not any bigger than I was 20 minutes ago. Right. It's hard.
I think
so
for
you
a
got to
lot
stop
of this
doing that.
stuff, the more you educate a kid, the better. I was so lucky. My psychology teacher he was never my teacher, but I did learn a lot from him at Dobson. He helped our athletes out. He would just teach them what he knew about the psychology side of things. Writing things down was good. Discussion was good. You know, he would have one where he would say, like, what is your worst trait as a teammate? And that if you had the right kind of growth mindset, you could become a really good teammate out of that discussion, or you could get really scared and not do anything. And that would be your younger athletes. They
haven't figured that out.
They haven't figured that out yet.
Patience is key, right?
Giving yourself grace.
Greatness takes time.
Yeah.
I actually was watching there's a docudrama movie coming out about Giannis and his family. Did you see the previews
We
for
saw
that?
that.
I was going to say we just saw that before.
And I saw it's interesting. I saw
Disney.
Saw a video of a young Giannis shooting 3-point shots, looking very fluid.
And now it's all jerky.
And now it's all kind of
Is that because
weird.
he got strong?
I'm wondering. Yeah, maybe he's just it changed. And
he's such a different.
And I wonder if
physique now. It's
I wonder if
crazy.
he's blocked some of that from his game, just because now
He doesn't need to do it as much.
Now I'm not a very good 3-point shooter. I don't need to do it as much. I wonder where that comes from, because there's
guys like him though don't need to shoot the three.
But you're right. But his greatness certainly took time and it evolved, right? So I guess the point I'm getting at is, you watch young Giannis shoot the ball. It was a nice looking. I mean, it was almost Kevin Durant looking, just because he's long and he was skinny. And then his greatness started to develop, and that wasn't necessarily part of what he needed to do to become great. But I'm sure he was patient with himself and didn't compare to others.
Those parents are doing something right.
Yeah, they got all those incredible athletes, and then incredible human beings.
Yes.
Humble.
They're funny.
Incredible human beings. Yeah.
I'm excited for that. Disney
made that one.
I think discussion is something that the best high-performing teams do. They're not afraid of team discussion, and they'll talk about this kind of stuff. I think, this is the same thing as like strength and weaknesses, right? Like, if you identify it, then you're going to go in one direction of growth or you're not.
Right.
But in discussion is usually where you're going to learn, what we as a team need to do, especially like when it comes to what phase of the game are we not doing well enough. That's like a tactical side of it. But then there's maybe some relationship side of it that we need to do a better job, and maybe we can grow there. I think it's all going to depend on the culture that you want to set at wherever you're at too,
Yeah, well, culture is huge.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that before on the show, that it's what drives everyday action. And I think mindset's definitely part of that culture, right? And you hit it on the head. I mean, conversations are where you're going to develop a lot of this. You have to be willing to discuss it. And
some people don't like it though. It's hard.
You have to be a little bit vulnerable to it, right? Like, oh man, I'm not very good at X, Y, or Z, and that's okay, because that's why we're here.
But I think as a high performing team, those are things that you have to do.
Right.
Or a high performing unit of people.
One of my favorite quotes from Karch Karai is,
Karch Kirai.
Yeah, this is a place of becoming, not a place of being.
Yeah.
Where we're
he's got a lot of good Karchism, man.
Yeah.
He hasn't really done the whole coaching thing that long.
Very smart man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's one of those like really good players that's looking good for him on his coaching career. Because sometimes it's not good. Not good at all. It doesn't
always translate.
No.
And you know what? It's funny you say that, because it doesn't translate, because for some of them, because I don't think some of those great athletes understand this stuff the way that they should. Because a coach, I think great coaches have to understand. Okay, either you get great players, right? And I'm not saying Phil Jackson's not a great coach, but he coached the best basketball players of all time.
Yeah.
Right. So either you get great players, and maybe you're just an average coach, but your players help you win, which is fine. Or you have to develop these kids / adults, whatever, you mold them into what you want them to be, and you get the most out of them with your culture and your mindset and so like that. And I think the great athletes, the great players, I don't think they understand this stuff. I think they naturally
Do you think they're aware of it?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think they naturally they get it because it's part of who they are. I'm great. I'm driven to be great. I don't need this whole I fail thing to help me get better, even though some of them have talked about it. But then they expect everybody else to just be on their level and realizing that it might be a process and everybody's somewhere different on that plane. And your job as a coach is to get them there, right? Your job as a parent is to get your kid there. And I think sometimes these great athletes are just like, well, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you just good at it?
It's a huge kryptonite I think good players have. The ones that I've coached, they're just like, why don't they work as hard as me? What?
Like they are.
How do you know that?
You're judging their level of work ethic.
Just worry about making them better in the best way you can, I've seen that all the time. And it like causes this unneeded conflict.
Right.
Like, really? I'm trying harder than you. Really? You don't know what their effort is to your effort.
I've had some athletes do that too.
Oh, yeah.
Great ones and then average ones as well. I've had some average ones say, Coach, I don't think everybody on the team's working very hard.
Dude, I don't think you're working wrong.
Yeah. I mean, you better be great to call people out on that kind of thing.
And sometimes the special ones can do it. I've seen a couple in high school. It doesn't happen much in high school though, because they're not like humans yet. Happens more so I feel like in college and then after when you know who you are, right? You have this identity,
right.
You know what you want. But in high school, everyone's kind of just floating around.
They're still trying to figure it out a little bit.
They're just like,
they get
a new boyfriend, girlfriend every other week kind of thing. Like,
it's the biggest challenge, at least for me, is to try to help all of them understand that we're in it together.
Yeah, and we all lose, we all win.
Just because you're angry at me because you don't think I'm working harder, you want more from me as a teammate, it's not personal. This is, again, growth versus fixed. It's not personal. You're not attacking me. You're not being the mean guy or whatever. You just are trying to help the team win, and that's what you think is required. And then you got the goofy kid over there that's just, they're there.
He's along for the ride.
They're happy to be there, but then that's their role. You're like, well, why is this kid so goofy over here? Why? Because,
why does he get to do that?
Because that's his role. That's what he thinks the team needs to win. And when you fit it all together and you get those teams that understand each other,
that's the buy-in.
Yeah, that's when you get the greatness.
Hugh McCutcheon, you know who that is, right?
Of course.
Okay, hey, gotta check.
I know some of them.
Sometimes you gotta check, right?
I know some of them.
He says really good coaches are businessmen and women. Like we're salespeople because we have to sell this idea to a group of people to get them to do said task or have this one goal in mind. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
We're selling a lot.
And sometimes they're not buying.
No.
Sometimes
there's not a lot of buying.
High schoolers are tough to sell. They can be.
Well, you say that.
It helps when you see them a lot. The ones that you don't see a lot, like the ones that are like probably in your classes, those are the ones that are like a lot of fun.
Like if I look at my teams over the years, I'm looking at all these pictures on the wall. I think when and maybe this is a program deal. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's going to be an upcoming episode.
One of our upcoming topics is developing a prep program, a high school program. And I look at my programs and I think that by the time they get to the varsity team, they've already kind of figured that out, that this is how it works type of thing. But then I get into like a club scenario and I got kids coming up to me who are saying, well, like she's being mean because she's yelling at me to get better, or she wants me to play harder, or I'm intimidated by her competitiveness, so to speak, or his competitiveness. But then I don't necessarily experience that in high school. And I wonder why that is. Because the high school kids have already figured out, they know who each other, they've played with each other for so long.
I think they see where they are on campus too.
They know who they are.
I think there's a social aspect as well.
And you don't get that in the club scene.
No, you just show up to a gym.
Even though you might have played with this person for so long. And so like, oh man, she's being mean to me today. Or he's calling me out, coach. And that makes me feel bad. And they don't understand that again, roles
develop. Are so important.
Right. And each person's there to help you grow.
Yeah.
And if you approach it the right way, you will. Otherwise, back to our topic, you're fixed.
Yeah.
Like this last high school season that I just had with my Perry high school boys, everybody knew Gehrig was the alpha. And there were days when Gehrig was a flat out jerk, right, to everybody. He was just angry, brooding, frustrated, right? Like, and he and I'd have conversations. He'd be like, "Dad, they're just not playing hard."
Yep.
Yep. I said, "Yeah, gee, you're right, but like, you have to help them along. Figure out what they need in order to do that. You can't just bark at them all the time."
Yeah. Do you think your actions right now are making is making this better or worse? Right? Like, are we getting better in this practice right now, Gehrig?
The great part about Gehrig,
and he'll usually be like, no.
He recognized it right away. Yeah, probably shouldn't act that way. But the guys knew, right? So like,
well, those guys have known him a long time
for a long
too.
time.
That helps a lot.
I pull a guy, hey, Brody, how do you feel about Gehrig yelling at you?
Yeah, well,
who's Gehrig?
Yeah. And then if Brody does something negative, same thing. Man, it's Brody.
Right. So
that's called loving each other for like weaknesses and just understanding. Well, it's not super detrimental.
I also think that those boys, just these boys in general, and high school teams, we'll get into that next episode, but I think they see, I think by the time they get to the varsity team, they see and understand what it's all about. I think they, and at least
the high school model is pretty cool.
It is.
When you see it, how you see it all flow out and how you see a kid grow. It's pretty cool.
And then you see a club situation where I think a lot of kids enter club scenarios with a much more fixed mindset than they do a growth. And that's the struggle, I think, of all club coaches and parents in general. I think parents, if they had these conversations with their kids more often, I think they would realize how fixed their kids' mindsets are, especially when they enter into a club situation where things are different.
Do you think that's because they're in the club situation, it opens their eyes more or like, why do you think it occurs more in the club situation?
I think kids approach club in a little bit of a selfish way.
I don't think in a little bit. I think in a lot of it.
Like,
and I think that comes back to money.
Well, mom and dad are paying, right? Paying a lot of money for you to be there. So you better go get the most out of it for you.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily getting the most out of it for the team. And that's where we tend to get a lot of struggles as far as helping them understand how to continue to grow for themselves and for the team, because it's a team sport.
And it's beneficial. Right? If the team does well, you do well.
It's hard for them to understand that. So interesting stuff. Thanks for sticking with us for the last little bit. I love that conversation. I think there were some good parts to that. Next topic we got coming up is developing programs and high school versus club and kind of the ins and outs of that. So we got that coming up soon.
That one's fun. How to start, what matters, what doesn't matter.
It's great.
Yeah, I think that's fun.
And we've got cool perspective. I've been doing it now. This is year 19. You've been at it for
10 years in high school sports.
And then Noah just got his first season. Just started. We've got a nice kind of run at it. Maybe we'll see if we can swing in a guest to help us out a little bit.
If anyone has a good guest idea, let us know.
So, all right, that's what's coming up. Make sure that you follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe. Look for us on where you find all of our podcasts. Google, Apple, all that stuff. And again, if you've listened this long, you're
a real one.
Already know that stuff. But we thank you for being with us. The donation card's still on there. The Venmo's still on there.
The Venmo will be in the description of the YouTube video. Absolutely.
Still taking Venmo donations so we can get some merch out and maybe start spreading the word. It's been a hiatus for us. We talked about that last episode, but hopefully we're back. We're going to get some momentum rolling, and we thank you for
technical difficulties before.
We've had some great stuff going.
We are grinding.
We're grinding, but we thank you for being with us and sticking around, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Peace.